Hello and welcome to another episode of Raw Chatter. I am your host speaking, Vicky Midwood, integrative health, nutrition and lifestyle coach, and of course the addiction eliminator. And we are talking today to an amazing lady. Her story is going to blow you away, folks. I have got with me Sarah Jouault. Have I said it right, Sarah? You can tell me if I haven't. And she is Jouault. There you go. She is a fundraiser, but she is an author of an amazing book called Never Give Up, Give Back. Do you want to just show us the cover of the book, Sarah? It's a beautiful cover. It's an awesome book. And so, first of all, thank you so much for joining me. And I want you to share with our listeners and viewers, what was it that prompted you to write this book with such an outstanding and intriguing title?
I had just sold my business, very luckily 2 months before lockdown happened. So I suddenly had loads of time, loads of space. And about 2 years into lockdown, I decided that I would start writing my book about my life story. My family and my friends had all said, you should write a book about your life.
Yes.
And I thought about it, the things that had really upset me writing the book, either the people had died or they weren't in my life anymore. Yeah. So I didn't want to hurt anybody. I did lots of research to make sure people that I put in my book were fine with it.
Good.
And I felt that if I wrote this book, I could show that if you carry on, you don't have to turn to drugs or alcohol or try to kill yourself. 50 years ago, we didn't have mental health. And I felt like I really wanted to help people today with mental health problems, to show that the first 45 years of my life, which some of it was very traumatic,
yes,
prepared me for the next 25 years of fundraising and racing.
Amazing.
Sorry.
So tell us, I was just going to ask you, so what was your business that
hair and beauty.
So hair and beauty, right. And for those people who are not actually joining us on YouTube and watching, if you're just listening on podcast, you will see that Sarah absolutely looks incredible and her hair is the most amazing color. Do you want to just share with people, how old are you, Sarah? Because I'm sure you don't mind sharing it, do you?
No, yesterday I was 71.
Amazing. So for those people watching, I'm sure you're all going, oh my God, what does she do? And for those of you listening, just take our word for it. So she looks amazing. She obviously walks her talk. So tell us, you said that you went through a lot of trauma and mental health wasn't something really that was spoken about, was it? You're kind of the same era as my parents, and we didn't talk about emotions, we didn't talk about feelings. It was the British stiff upper lip. You just got on with it, pulled yourself together. So do you want to share with people just a taster of some of the things that you talk about in the book?
Well, my early childhood was very different, and I didn't go to actually live permanently with my mother and my daddy, I call them, till I was 9. Right. And that had a lot of effect on me, but I did come very close to my nana and granddad, who brought me up for at least 5 years of that time.
Right.
And I think because I didn't have my parents around me, I became very independent.
Yeah.
And then I had a dreadful shock just before my 18th birthday and found out that my daddy wasn't my daddy.
Whoa.
Which was huge.
How did you find that out? Was it by accident or
yes,
had you been looking?
I was going to find a job in nursing to start my nursing career, and I ended up working in the Sunshine Home for Blind Children as a carer for kids. And I was looking for a suitcase, and I found this suitcase which said Mrs. Mary Elizabeth Jouault. And I was like, that's Mummy's. That's my mother's name, Mary Elizabeth.
Yeah.
And it took me a long time to pluck up the courage to ask her. And first she denied it totally. saying that she hadn't been married before. And then I said, well, there's a suitcase up there with another name. And then I just said, because of all the things that had happened to me in my childhood, which were very odd. I wasn't allowed a passport. I wasn't allowed to go places. There were no photographs of mummy and daddy being married.
Right.
I just said, Daddy's not my father, is he? And she said, of course he is. You know, my mother was very, you know, like that,
Yeah.
you know. And I said, he's not, you know, he's not my daddy. I know he's not my daddy. And I felt, I can't explain it. I felt different growing up through my childhood.
Right. I think there's a lot of people can probably understand that feeling if they've gone through what you've gone through and realize that intuitively you kind of know something's not quite right, but you don't know what it is.
No, I didn't know what it was. I didn't look the same as my brothers and sisters. I was very different. I was outspoken. I was adventurous. You know, I was quite naughty, actually. But then to find out and go and meet this man who was my father, and then the realization that I'd lost my daddy, and instead of having 4 brothers and sisters, I had 8 half brothers and sisters.
Gosh.
Which was, you know, there were lots of questions which I've answered in my book. So I'm not going to tell you. You have to read my book.
Yeah. Am I guessing then that he was still in the UK? Was he easy to find, or was that in itself a challenge?
No, I said to Mummy, where is he? And he said he now lives in Jersey because my father was French. That's
right.
Hence the name.
Hence the name, yes.
Yes. And he was very pleased to see me.
Brilliant.
And he gave me all the letters that Mummy had returned, which was a hard thing to
I can imagine.
have given to me. But it's I don't know. I think it wasn't long after that I went to Africa. I was like, I so wanted to get into nursing. And I was lucky while I was nursing working at the Sunshine Home. A man called Dr. Anthony Barker, who worked at St. Thomas's Hospital, he said that they were organizing a teaching program for nurses to be, so you could go to different places to see what kind of nursing you'd like to do. So I went to St. Francis Hospital, I went to Queen Victoria in East Grinstead, and obviously I was in the Sunshine Home, so I was with blind, physically handicapped children.
Amazing.
And I found that I really liked being with people with physical disabilities rather than mental, like at St. Francis. And my real father in Jersey knew one of the ministers, Mr. Holland, Andrea Holland, in the Ian Smith government, as it was Rhodesia then.
Yeah.
And he got me a job. So I went out to Rhodesia just before my 19th birthday and arrived there. And then, my mother insisted that I couldn't use the name Jouault, that I had to travel with my stepfather's name, which was Goddard. And that caused lots of problems. But that's all. I tell you all about that in the book.
Yes. Yeah.
And then I arrived in Africa, and it was a huge cultural shock.
I can imagine. At 19 years old, and you're on your own, I'm guessing.
Yes.
You went on your own, yeah?
I did. And there were all sorts of things. Like I remember seeing snails, like we have snails in this country, but the snails there were like this big.
Huge.
Everything was giant. The spiders were as big as your hand. And I just kind of felt as I was writing the book that I could then progress to writing about the traumas in my life that happened in Africa.
Yeah.
I did
they were many.
Yes, they were. And I had to go to Scotland to get away from my home. I took my little dog Sprout to write about it. I mean, it was cathartic. Right. It helped me. But it being in my home, because it was my bed, I was like having nightmares about things. Right. So I needed to go away to write it. And that's one of the things in the book that I write about, that was talked about an awful lot, and the government laws were changed in 1986, 87 about rape. And I felt that with what I'd gone through in my childhood, and then this happened to me, and I kind of think a lot of these things happened because of what had happened in my childhood, and then finding that my daddy wasn't my daddy, that I wanted to help people, because it's very hard to come forward and go to court. And
you actually did. I mean, we don't want to give the whole story away,
no,
but you did something then. When we're talking a number of years ago now,
50
when you were
years
only
ago.
right, so you were 19 though when this happened,
Yeah.
and you were actually did pursue it, and you know that we went through the whole process of waiting for it to go to court and all of that, and that in and of itself is hard enough to do for somebody who's significantly older. But as a young person in a foreign country, to have the bravery, because I think that's what it is, the courage to be able to say, actually, no, this is not acceptable. This is not allowed. Nobody's getting away with doing this. That's a heck of a thing to be able to do. And by the sounds of it, you didn't have much support at all.
None at all. So we weren't given a solicitor. They just gave us some little young chap who knew really nothing about anything. Right. And the outcome really devastated me.
Yeah, absolutely. And so when you were writing the book and you had to revisit this, did you then decide that maybe you did want to talk to somebody about it? Or were you finding that actually just the process of writing it down was sufficient for you?
No, when I went to get married to my third husband, I realized that I needed to go and get therapy for everything.
Right.
For my first husband, who was an alcoholic and very, well, I don't really have to say very much about
no,
that.
That's sufficient.
Married to an alcoholic, they know.
Fill in the blanks, yeah.
And obviously how the rape affected me with relationships with men. Yeah. And so it was like 25, 26 years later, 2001 it was, I went and I had hypnotherapy, and that was amazing. It helped me with my mother. It helped me with my husband who'd passed. It helped me put lots of things in boxes. Nice. And I should have done it before, but time gets in the way. Life gets in the way.
And hindsight is a wonderful thing, isn't it? We can look back and just go, oh yeah, I really should have. But you do what you think is the right thing to do at the time. And so when you did finally decide to go for it, it obviously was helpful. It was a really good thing for you to do, which is great. And this is where, you know, for people listening, it's never too late, is it? It's never too late to get some help, because it's usually going to be beneficial. And as long as you're talking to somebody who you feel you can trust, who is qualified to help and to listen, then it's a very positive thing to do.
Yes, I think that, and the doctor was amazing. He was incredible, and Dr. Thorpe, his name was. He was amazing at hypnotherapy. You know, he'd put a piece of lemon in your mouth when you didn't want to go back to something, and you go, oh, that's horrible, you know. And then next minute he'd put you back in the room, you know. Amazing. But I think one of the things that really helped me was my accountant. Okay. And he said, Sarah, you know, after my husband had died, he said, Sarah, you know what you should do? You should run. Right. And I was like, I can't run. And he said, well, you stand up all day. You're a nurse, and now you're a hairdresser. And I found that I could run fast. Not, you know, I could actually run fast. And when I first started, I was like, it was wet and cold and miserable. Right. And I thought, what am I doing?
I'm just going to take you back a little second there, if you don't mind. So how did you transition from nursing to hairdressing? How did that come about?
Right. So I stayed nursing. I married Dimitri, and I stayed nursing for about 5 years. Right. But he had 2 small children that their mother no longer wanted. and they were 5 and 7 when I married him.
Congratulations.
And so I said, well, if you expect me to look after them, then I want to have one of my own. But I married Dimitri for a very unusual reason. I didn't marry him because I loved him. I married him because I needed to go back home. But that's another story.
That's a great story, which we won't spoil for people that do get the book, because it's an incredible story.
Yeah. And so he was a hairdresser.
Right.
So when I was nursing, he was very jealous, very controlling. And so he insisted that I was in the salon, being there, helping, doing stuff. And because I was intelligent, I found hairdressing very easy. I was very good with my hands. I sewed, I cooked, I painted,
Right.
So hairdressing was really easy. So I became a hairdresser.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Awesome. And then so this accountant guy suggests that you run.
Yeah.
Help people to give some context to that, because why would an accountant say it's a good idea to go running?
Well, when my husband died, like normally when someone dies, you get your mortgage paid, right?
Yeah.
And you get their pension.
Yeah.
So first off, the solicitor was flabbergasted. He actually wrote me a letter saying he was flabbergasted, because the mortgage, he'd cashed in one policy and stopped paying the other. So when he died, I didn't get my mortgage paid. And we'd taken out an awful lot of money for him to start another business, which is another story.
Yeah.
And I just was under so much financial stress,
Right.
as well as having him die. And my accountant just said, when you run, you have to look at the ground. You can't look at the sky and everything around. You've got to look at the ground, because otherwise you'll fall over. I did fall over a lot in the beginning, because I used to end up looking around. And then what happened was, I joined this running club, Worthing Striders, and they all talked about their times. And I just thought, I can't do this. I need a reason. Right. I can't run for no reason. Yeah. And my mother said her neighbor's little girl was dying of a very rare disease called leukodystrophy, which is a really horrible illness in the brain. And it slowly dies every part of what you can do. So you can't walk, you can't see, you can't speak, you can't hear. So it's a horrible illness. And she needed a wheelchair. So I said I'd run a marathon for her. No training, nothing, just a little bit of running. And the only marathon that I could find to do was in Dublin.
Right.
And so off I trundled to Dublin to do this marathon.
So by this point, had you just been like going out for what? Runs around the block, or how long were you running for at that point?
I think I'd done 10 or 12 miles, and I'd been running with
reasonable distance,
and the club, but only for a few months,
Right.
And when I started the race, this American girl said, "Oh, how many marathons have you done?" So I said, "This is my first one." "Oh, have you been training a lot?" "No." So she goes, "You'll hit the wall." And I was like, "What's that?" And she goes, "I'm not telling you. When you hit it, you'll know." And I remember it was 23 miles. I hit the wall, and I started crying for the pain in my legs. The pain in my legs was horrendous.
Right.
And I just thought, you stupid woman, why are you crying when there's this little girl who's flown all the way from England to Dublin to watch you race, and she's dying? And that made me finish the race. And I finished.
That is so important. I'm going to pick up on that, because this is you changing the story in your head and overriding where your brain was taking you, because it was taking you to focus on the pain and the discomfort, wasn't it, that you were feeling? And you had an intuitive ability, just naturally you decided, because it is a decision, that you were going to take your focus to somebody who was in a worse position than you were. And this is something that is so important, I think, for people to understand, because you don't have to be special and different to be able to do that, do you? Anybody can do it if they choose to do it. And that allowed you to finish that race.
Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing.
and I finished in under 4 hours.
Wow, for your very first one, that's absolutely incredible. Now, that was your first one, and I'm assuming you raised enough money to get the wheelchair.
I did 5,500.
Wow,
Just
that's a flipping expensive wheelchair. Probably got more than one then.
No, it was WizKids was 5,000 for an electric wheelchair.
Was it? Wow. Is that how much they are? Amazing. So you did
well,
it.
that was then, back then. That was in 1998.
I had no clue that they were that expensive.
Yeah.
Wow. So you did that, and then was that it? Where you got the bug?
No, I wasn't going to do anymore. And then everybody kept coming to me and asking me to raise money for children. And because I had 4 children that were all grown up and perfectly fit and well, though I did nearly lose my daughter at birth. She was very, very ill in Africa. And of course, that was not good. But she's now almost 44 and has a little boy of 4 herself. But I just thought, yeah, I can do stuff to raise money for children.
Yeah.
So I carried on running, and then I started doing triathlon. And someone suggested to me, why don't you do triathlon? And I was like, well, I can't swim for a start.
Okay.
That's the biggest thing.
Good reason. Yeah.
I have never ridden a bike because we were too poor as children to have a bike.
Right.
And they said, but you can run. And I was like, well, yeah,
1 out of 3.
For the next 5 years, I entered races swimming breaststroke because I could not put my head under the water.
Wow, amazing.
And then the first actual story in my book is the escape from Alcatraz, and I qualified for the race, but they stipulated that I had to learn front crawl, and that was the hardest thing I have ever had to do.
Really?
Like I couldn't do it. I just, everybody kept trying to teach me.
Mm-hmm.
And I just had this awful fear. And of course, with front crawl, you have to put your head in the water.
Yeah, yeah.
And I remember this one chap, he was a triathlon teacher for the Navy.
Right.
And he said, I'll teach you. So I'd go once a week to this tiny little pool in Hayling Island and learn to swim. And he'd get really cross. I'd just laugh because I was like, I've drunk more water than I've swum in. And he goes, this is serious. I'm like, oh, right, okay. Anyway, I learned 4 strokes. 4 strokes. That's all I could do. Wow. And then he said, you can swim now. Go away and learn.
Right. Okay. So if you can do 4 strokes, you can carry on.
Yeah. So I went to the gym and I persevered. And one day my brother, who's on my dad's side, Julian, he came over to see me and I said, Julian, I can swim front crawl, So we went to the gym and I swam 1 length and he goes, do another one. And I said, oh, I can only do 1. And he said, but you need to do 60 in a triathlon. You can't just do 1 length. And I don't know how it sort of came about. I learned front crawl. And then 2005, I started swimming front crawl, but it wasn't until 2010 when I qualified in the UK for the IRONMAN and went to Kona.
Wow. So that's a heck of a jump from you not being able to swim, not being able to ride a bike, hating putting your head in the water, and now suddenly you have made all of these jumps, hence the title of the book, Never Give Up, or part of the title, because you literally just kept going, even when every part of you was going, I don't like this and I don't want to do it. You just did it anyway, didn't you?
Yeah, but I did it for kids. People used to say, what was your time? What was this? And I'd say, I have no idea.
That wasn't your driver, was it? No.
My driver was raising money for kids. So every year I'd say, right, what charity am I raising for? Is it Snowdrop Trust or Chestnut Tree or Rocking Horse? And what am I going to do to raise the money? What ideas, And when I did the UK Ironman, I had to go to Kona 8 weeks later. And what scared me that I was doing it again, all of this again, which is a 2.5 mile swim, 112 miles on the bike. Wow. And run a marathon, and I was 57 years old when I'm doing my first Ironman.
That's amazing. And this is something that people don't realize. Yeah. Go on. Carry on. So you at 57, you're doing your first Ironman, and you are recognizing that this is something that actually you quite enjoy. So help us to understand what got you to being able to qualify for this one now in the UK. And we'll cut it there.
And there were 3,000 athletes in the water. My fear of the water went in 2010. It just Amazing. Went. Incredible. Because, 3,000 people in the sea together. Now they don't do that like it anymore.
No,
so another, sort of.
Elbows everywhere, feet, and God knows what hitting you in the face.
Writing the book, I need, besides raising money, I need some kind of motivation, because that's me. So I thought I'd enter an Ironman again after being retired for 8 years.
Right.
And so I did the UK Ironman in June, and I qualified.
June, just this year, 2024.
Yeah. And I qualified for the World Championships in New Zealand in December this year. But 6 weeks ago, I did the European Ironman Championships, and I came first.
Oh my God. So that's incredible. So you retired for 8 years, and then suddenly in the space of a few months, you've just gone bang, bang, bang. And by the way, I'm first. Wowzers. That's absolutely incredible. And again, this is about you just deciding, isn't it? It starts with that decision that you wanted to do something. So what are you wanting to do moving forward now? Because obviously you're going to do this event, and what's next? What's next for Sarah? Because it's like there's no stopping you, is there?
No, I don't really know. It was really funny with the title of the book. When I started training again in the beginning of the year, I found it really hard after 8 years of no training to go back into training. And I remember I was about 3 miles from home, and it started to pour with rain. I was on my bike, and I hadn't thought of a title for my book. I think I was going to call it Men and Medals, and and I was like, oh, I'm just giving up, And then I thought, no, I've still got to go home, so I might just as well cycle in the rain, Yeah. And then I thought, that's it. Never gave up, just gave back. And that's what I did all the way through my life. I never gave up on anything or any person. And I just gave back always of myself, which was, played a big toll in my life. And in 2018, I was suffering from severe stress from work, from pushing myself. And I was diagnosed in 2019 with drop syndrome. And
Explain, they said, help us to understand what that is for people who.
Okay, so it normally happens in older women.
Right.
It doesn't seem to happen in men. And it's caused by severe stress. So I was trying to sell my business. I was crooked out of thousands of pounds by
the drop syndrome is normally older ladies, not men.
Yes. And it's caused by severe stress. And I was trying to sell my business quietly without upsetting my staff or my clients. And I was crooked by these people that were properly registered in Company House in London. And they were crooks, they were criminals. And I had a feeling that they were, but I wasn't sure. And they were demanding thousands of pounds from me in that hour of talking to me on the phone.
Wow.
And I started falling down first in unusual places. And then I had a very, very bad fall at the beginning of 2019. And I broke my nose in 2 places. I had 16 stitches in my face. I lost a tooth and a half. And the little doctor, she was so lovely. She was a little Indian doctor. And she said, Sarah, your stress is the business. You have to sell it. You have to not have this stress in your life anymore. Because next time you could fall down in the middle of a road and get run over by a car.
Crikey, that's scary.
Yeah, and then I'd sort of just got over that, and then I was diagnosed with cancer in my eye, and I was like, I didn't know what to do. And then this man came along and offered me a ridiculously stupid low sum for my business, and I just thought, I have to sell it, otherwise I'm going to die. You know, I need to sell it. And of course, I was incredibly lucky. I believe that God was. My internet crashed. It
Right.
disappeared.
It's
It
all right.
disappeared.
We're still rolling, so I can edit it out. So don't worry about it. So we
Right.
just carry on. Yeah.
Okay. So I got to what was drop syndrome.
So we'd gotten to the point
Oh
where
no,
you
about
said
my
it's not
cancer. Yeah,
conjunctivitis, but they gave you some
yeah,
stuff anyway. So let's go from there.
yeah. So I went 3 times back to the doctors, and by then I was getting really worried. And this one doctor, because then I could see down in the bottom of my eye, I could see all this black stuff.
Wow.
And she got a needle and started to pick it out. Anyway, and she obviously thought about what she did, and then they contacted somebody else, and they said she needs to go and see a skin specialist. So I couldn't understand. Nobody talked to me about cancer. Nobody. And the doctors, when it came back that it was cancer, they'd never seen or heard of it in the muscle of the eye. Anyway, the skin cancer lady said, she said to me, Sarah, you need to go to an eye specialist.
Yeah, yeah.
So I went to an eye specialist, and this all happened very quickly, within weeks. And the assistant doctor, she went and called the head surgeon, Mr. Newent, and he said, have you measured it yet? And she said, no. And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, you have cancer in the eye, but we don't know how far back it's gone.
Oh my God.
And it's a very rare cancer, and it comes into the muscle of your eye.
Gosh.
That's why I couldn't open my eye.
Yeah, yeah.
And so to get to it, they had to cut the bottom of my eyelid out to go inside. Wow. And then they took skin from the side of my face, and they reconstructed everything by taking the muscle and the cartilage from the top of my eyelid. And then my eye was sewn together for 6 weeks.
Wow.
And they just said, when my eye opened, I was amazingly lucky, because it hadn't gone to the optic nerve, and I could have died from eye cancer. And I haven't had any problem with my sight. All I've got is one eye is different from the other now. It's like I've had plastic surgery on this eye. It's lovely and open.
It's incredible, though, isn't it? Well, I mean, the fact that A, the guy knew what it was, and B, that they acted so quickly. So there's definitely something watching over you, I believe.
Yeah. He said it was when he came 40 years ago to this country, he said it was very, very rare. Right. And I think people had it, and of course then they just died of, brain cancer, and it was from the cancer in the eye,
which people would have probably missed and not realized that that's what it was. Wow, incredible. So then lockdown happened. So what is that when you decided that you were going to write this book?
Yes, about a year and a half after. So we're the end of 24, aren't we?
Yeah.
And I started not this Christmas, the Christmas before. So 23, 22. So just before 22, I decided to start writing. I'd lost my mother in the summer. So I felt, writing about what she did wasn't going to hurt her, because she wasn't here, and also I've spoken to all of my clients and friends and people that I don't know, and I said, do you feel that any part of the book was unkind about anybody? And they said no. Everybody has said the same thing. But obviously some of my family haven't quite agreed.
Well, you know what, when it comes
to your story, it's my story.
It is your story, but it's an absolutely incredible story of courage, of determination, of resilience, of you recognizing that you just had to keep going, therefore you did. And that's available to everybody, even in the darkest of times. And as you said, there's a lot of stuff in that book, and I highly recommend that people do grab it for themselves, because there are so many different stories in there that people will relate to. I don't think everybody's going to relate to all of them, but I'm going to suggest that the majority of people can relate to some of them for sure. And so what I wanted to ask you is, and I don't know if you've ever done this as a calculation, but this is my brain that's very curious. How much money over the years do you think that you have raised, and how many children and charities have you actually helped?
I have raised £162,000 for terminally ill children.
Just all on your own?
Yes, all by myself, by cooking, a little bit by sponsorship for my races, but mainly by cooking, holding auctions, doing open gardens where I've done loads and loads of cooking. Even in lockdown, I never stopped raising money. I'd cook and sell them from my front door. so I, you know, I've always had this thing, like I've got to raise money every year. Like I just have to. So as I said, it's been Chestnut Tree House, which is a children's hospice. Snowdrop Trust is for children to die in their homes. The Rocking Horse, I've done the marathons for them, and they sponsored me for the Olympics, and I became the second highest fundraiser in the Olympics.
Wow.
For children. And so I ran in the Olympic Stadium.
Oh, what an achievement. There's not many people in the world can say that, is there? No. Absolutely unbelievable. So Sarah, if people are going, I need to get my hands on this book, I need to read it right now, where do we send them?
So you can contact me on my website, which is very easy to remember. It's just jouault.uk.
Brilliant. And we will put a direct link to your website in the show notes. And if you're watching on YouTube, it'll be in the description. So you can just literally click on the link and just go there. And on your website, you've not only got details of the book and how you can purchase that, but you've also got information about how people can donate, haven't you, to your fundraising activity?
So I have a Just Giving page. For Chestnut Tree House, which is the children's hospice. You can just go click on the link and straight away donate for my World Championships in December. So I'm training very, very hard.
This is so amazing. So what date in December, Sarah? And will it be televised, or how do people find out about it?
Yes, I think they do have the World Championships on like Sky and places like that. So they are televised. And when we're actually racing, on my website, I will put my number and my link, so you can actually track me as I'm racing the race. And it's on Saturday, the 14th of December.
Brilliant. Pop that date in your diaries, folks. Saturday the 14th of December. But get the book before then, so you'll be sat there going, "Come on, girl." Sarah, what I want to do, because we're going to have to wrap up, unfortunately. I'm sure you and I could probably chat for days and go through all of your story. But I want you to finish off by doing that. So can you just read what is on the back of the book, the synopsis, just to help people to, if they're in the slightest bit of doubt whether should I buy the book or not, read this for them. This is a synopsis that's on the back of Sarah's book.
Sarah Jouault's journey through her early childhood life shows incredible courage and resilience. What happens to you does not define you. Her life took a harrowing turn when faced with a brutal assault while living in Rhodesia. Yet from the depths of despair, she emerged stronger than ever. Through the highs and lows of marriage and loss, Sarah found solace in the rhythm of her footsteps, embarking on a remarkable journey that conquered her fear of the water. In this captivating story, children follow Sarah throughout her life. She tackles marathons, wins medals, and raises enormous sums for children's charities. Prepare to be inspired by Sarah's extraordinary journey of endurance, determination, giving back, and making a difference.
Wow. I've just literally gone all goosebumpy. It is such an amazing book, Sarah, and you are just an incredible person. And I just want to say thank you so much for being a guest here on my podcast. There's one last question that I like to ask all of my guests. If there's one thing that you would like the listener to go away from this podcast with, What is it?
Inspiration.
Yes. I think you've definitely done that. Thank you so much. So there you have it, folks. That is the incredible story of Sarah. Do go visit her website, check it all out, not just for the book, but everything else that she is doing. And just remind you, if you haven't yet subscribed to the podcast, please do, because then you'll be notified when we've got some more amazing guests on. If you found this useful, or you think somebody else would find it useful, point them in the direction of the links to the podcast. And as always, I'm going to leave you with this. We only have one body, as far as we know, and one life. Please take care of both of them, because you deserve to. You are worth it. You do deserve it. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.